Um, last time, one of the things we talked about was that after the war in Chanukah, they had to move from active confidence to passive confidence. And they had to calm down, as it were. And that's the sort of like the shita of Beis Shammai, that you start with 8 and you go down to 1. And then you had a lot of light, and then you go down to and you diminish it. So that's a movement from Netzach, which was that they won the war on Kafei on the 25th, and then they moved into lighting the menorah, which is a passive type of confidence, because it was a passive miracle, right? To win the war, they had to be victorious with active confidence, like David and Melech. They had to go and pursue their enemies. They had to win. But the whole point is that after you finish, you can't continue to hold on to this active confidence, because it can get the better of you. It can turn into arrogance, which it did. By the way, it did. It didn't even help them. But the idea is that they moved from Netzach to Hod. So I asked her what letter is related to that. And so on this chart, that this was made by Ruchama Tirosh. And she's somebody who's been with Rav Yitzchak for about 40 years now. And she's a graphic artist. So over the years, she's been, this is just one chart that she has. She has like 10 of them. So this is just a basic one with the Sfirot, and a lot of information around, and a lot of different parallels, a lot of different models that correspond one to the other. And so what I started saying is that I keep this one, the small one, relatively small, next to my desk, because I don't have everything in my head. I can't remember everything. So maybe over the years I will, but I refer to it each time to see all the basic correspondences. And it's visually pleasing, so it sort of gives me some kind of inspiration. Not in the shiur like this, because the shiur like this is very, just repeating what the Rav said. But when I try to learn something new, or try to do a new topic that I haven't heard from the Rav, so to develop it further, to enrich it, so I use this chart. I also have a few other. So the most important thing here, the thing that the question was which letter causes the shift from Netzach to Hod. And so the letter is Mem, and it's, of course, these are the three, what we call the mother letters, Shin, Aleph, Mem. And they're the horizontal lines that connect the Sfirot in this direction. They go through the axes between the left and the right. They go in both directions. So you would say that in one direction, from right to left, it would be like you would read the letter, the way you would read the letter usually. So Aleph is Aleph Lamed Pei, so that would be in this direction. And switching the direction would be like Pei Lamed Aleph, Pele, which would be like a wonder. Shin is in this direction, from Chachma to Bina, and then back from Bina would be Nun Yud Shin, which is very indicative of it, because Nun Yud Shin is nish. Nun Shin in general is the idea of the feminine, like Nashim, which is related to forgetfulness. Bina is like the forgetfulness, and Chokhmah is the memory. So you have to learn how to forget also. Learning how to forget is a very important principle in life. Menashe, because he had forgotten. But then once you look at this relationship between the miracle of the victory and the miracle of the Chanukah, of the menorah, so you also see something very important. Because if you look at, and what month is this related to? So this is related to the month of Elul, and this is related to the month of Kislev. So it fits very much that, I don't know how long the war was, but according to this, it started in Elul a year before. And it went all the way to Kislev. You can check it to see if really the war started in Elul, or there was such a thing. But what's more important is the chush. So the chush of Elul, which he also has here, the spiritual sense, is maise, is activity, and the spiritual sense of Hod of Kislev is sheina, is to sleep. So this fits very well with active and passive confidence. Because what do we say about Chizkiyahu? Chizkiyahu is completely passive confidence. He is the month of Kislev. And he is the notion that I'm going to go sleep and you, Hashem, fight the war for me. But David, he's Netzach in this case, like when he fought the wars. So he was in a sense of action. Another thing that was very interesting was that, if you remember, it's already 13 years when the evacuation from Gush Katif was. So one of the things that happened was that they chose, for very, I think, incorrect reasons, they chose their color as orange.
Which is not such a good color.
All the colors are good, depending for what. It's like all the numbers. There's no bad numbers. It just depends what you want to use them for.
Or maybe the word katif.
Maybe because it's oranges. But the reason they chose it was because, I don't know if you remember, at that time, there was a big uprising or a revolution, I don't even know what it was, in Ukraine.
Oh yeah.
And they took the orange color, and there was something about William of Orange or something. I'm not sure how this works. That orange is somehow related to revolution, to something like that.
It's the color of some Avodah Zarah in Asia.
They can't take colors. They can't take mountains. They can't take natural things. In any case, when I remember very vividly when the color started coming out. So Rev Ginsburg kept saying that it's a fatal mistake. He said because you're being passive, you're teaching people to be passive. This is exactly how it was. And he said in circumstances like this, you should have chosen purple or violet because it's active confidence, and that you need to do something. So there's a lot of stuff. So one of the things that you can work on when you're moving. Malchus is brown.
And that's not just purple?
I think we usually translate it actually as a violet. Violet. Not purple, but violet. Purple is something else. I'm not sure exactly what purple is. But the color is usually called violet.
We have a chart. She gave us that lady Gordon.
Okay. So it's all based on the same thing. It's all based on the same. The most interesting thing in this chart is the keter. So first of all, this is infrared. I don't know how you could do infrared, but this is what you chose, and this is ultraviolet. And the Chochmah and Bina are above the senses. So in the same way that visible light only goes so far, so Chochmah and Bina are the two extremes. And ultraviolet would be the extreme to the right, and infrared would be the extreme to the left.
Where's Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferet?
So blue, red, and yellow. And these are the natural colors, meaning artists and technology use two different color schemes. The artists use the natural color scheme, which is blue, red, and yellow, and from that they create all the colors. And that's how we learned in kindergarten, right? That you take blue and yellow, you get green, and you take red and yellow, you get orange. And these two, I don't remember, what do they give? Blue and
purple.
I guess they give purple. Yeah. Technology today uses a different system, which is called RGB, which is red, green, and blue. And printers use a completely different system, which is called CMYK, which is a completely different way of creating the colors. In any case, this is the more natural one. That is black and white. It doesn't really mean black and white. It's really that it's divided in two, and it's contrast. Consciousness is all about contrast. You become conscious of something when you can separate it, for instance, from the background. When you can see it contrasted with the background that it's sitting on. So he really uses black and white, but it doesn't have to be black and white. It's more like contrast, and that's the best way to grab it. She put it here above and below, I don't know, I have to look at it, why she did it this way, but the simple understanding is that it's cut down the vertical axis, left and right, to see why she did this. The keter is the most interesting, of course, because there's 3 heads in the keter. What? I need to see. In keter, there's 3 heads, and each one is a different type of white, if you want. So, Reisha de Arich, the elongated head, so it's white in the sense of white, in the way you would understand white. Reisha de Ayin, the head of nothingness, is transparent. And really, these two, this is called translucent, and this is called transparent. Difference. Translucent means it's like the difference between the nevuah of all the prophets and the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu. Translucent means that there's some kind of opacity, opaqueness to the color, meaning it's not completely transparent.
That's the white.
And that's the white.
That's Reisha de
Right, the Alich.
And Reisha de Ayin
is completely transparent. And then in the Reisha, in the Radla, in the highest, in the unknowable head, so here she drew it as black, but she writes right away that she's missing one word that I notice now, that it's black relative. You always look at it relative to Hashem himself. So when you say that it's black, you're not saying really that it's black. It's black relative to Hashem. That's how it's described. Ol ukma, like black light. But the blackness is really relative to Hashem, not to us. To us, it's completely transparent. Anything above this, we can't see at all.
You say that Adam HaRishon was transparent.
Okay.
It's light.
Right. So, one of the important things that comes out of this is, for instance, that Yotzer Or Vorei Choshech, that darkness is higher than light. So, in the sense that this is darkness, but it's not real, it's darkness relative to Hashem, and it's incomprehensible relative to us. So we also call it like it's black in the sense that we don't know what's there. It's like a black hole. But then the light, the further down you come, so she has other charts. She's very big on colors. So she does the progression of the light down. So there's a way of seeing this as like white light shining down through the sfirot and breaking up based on the spectrum. There's a way of doing this. She has a way of showing it. I don't have that chart here.
Rainbow?
It's like it's not exactly like a rainbow.
So
it's a
where
little
did
bit
she
more
get
complex.
the color? She got the color from some source in the Zohar?
No, the color Rav Yitzchak has been talking about for years.
So
Yeah.
it's his
Everything
interpretation.
everything here is based on the Rav.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Who did this?
Ruchama Tirosh. And she's been working on it a long time. So basically, the idea that I had in mind when I asked this was that we talked about in the first half of the previous class. We talked about that when they came out of Egypt, so they went from passive confidence into active confidence, because in Egypt they were bystanders, and then once you receive the Torah, now you have the power to be active. So that was in the reverse direction, and they went from Hod to Netzach. And you still have to go through some kind of mem. And there it's very clear what it was, the mem that they went through. Like, what mem did they go through?
42 steps?
It's mamish from Egypt to Har Sinai. They went through a mem. It said the mem is mine. So going through the Red Sea, that's like Yam Suf, is in order to move apparently from Hod to Netzach. Another thing that comes to mind is when we're working with people, these people are very affected by color, so you can actually do this. Especially if you do visualization or whatever, you can color things in the colors that you want. So if a person's too passive, to move from orange to violet, to try to see that people that are visual can grasp this. And so to see the transfer in colors in the mind's eye, like mamish to see it, is very helpful. As I was thinking about this class, so I thought it's about time. It's really been cooking inside of me for a long time. I used to suffer from something mental. Not mental. I used to have a certain like, I saw things a certain way, and I knew for a long time, since I'm about 13, that there's something wrong about it. I couldn't get it out of my head. Couldn't get it. Like it just stuck. And my conscious self always knew to run away from this. I don't need to go there. But my subconscious self couldn't. Like it was always there in the background. And then I had this conversation with somebody about, actually I know exactly when it was. It was on Gimel Shvat of this year. And in that conversation, I suddenly came to a certain realization about this thing that had been bothering me all these years. I came to a certain realization, a certain understanding. It moved me sort of like that the end of what I think is the opposite from what I want. It's a little complex. What it convinced me, though, it's not so important, but what it convinced me is that if an idea is strong enough, it can change things in the psyche itself. And Mamish convinced me, because from that day on, I felt as this, call it this improper thought that I couldn't get out. It started to diminish until it just disappeared.
And what was the idea?
It's like a conversation I had that showed me that this thought, its end, meaning if you take it to its logical conclusion, actually does the opposite from what I thought it does. It doesn't matter really, but what it convinced me was that when you change a person's hashkafa, you change the way that they see things, then things that really trouble inside the psyche, that you think that there's no escape from, suddenly change. They mamish, like, can be altered entirely and taken to a good place or a different place, or whatever it is.
What does that have to do with color?
I was thinking about this movement from one side to the other. Just saying that it really convinced me that talking and presenting conclusions, like for instance, remember the most important one that we've been talking about all these years is that expectations actually lead you not to joy but to depression. Right? That's the main one that we've been talking about all these years, because really what we're saying is that when you have expectations of things, then that's really an image that you build, and when it doesn't fulfill, so that it leads you to depression. And so therefore, even though people think that expectations are something good, I always talked about great expectations from Dickens as the example.
Like having a vision for life.
A vision, like we said, is something else. It's not an expectation. It's a vision that I have. It's something that's motivating me. But the expectation is that this is supposed to happen. This is how things should be. That word "should" probably comes from the word "shed." Probably comes from the word "demon." It's like nothing has to be a certain way that you think it has to be. And when it comes as an expectation, it actually puts you down, and you have to get rid of them in order to be productive. Or, for instance, I think we got an incredible class. Whoever followed the campaign on Thursday, that after it was successful, and we raised all the money that we wanted to raise, and we reached the goal, so the Rav Yitzchak he verbranged.
Of course.
And it was such a strange verbrengen, because it was like, sort of like, I always tell this story about, I had a couple of friends that got married, Tuba Li Chuba, and they were very into Breslov. And when the wedding was over, I saw them and they said, "You don't know, we got like 20,000 shekels back then. You don't know how many Likutei Moharan we can buy with this." Okay. So he was like, you know, we got this much money, 5 million shekels. You don't know how many pushkas we can buy with this. So it turned out that the reason he talked about it was a specific number, 80,000 pushkas. This whole thing. Do you hear it? Yeah, I have it written up. It turned out that it was because it was one lady, I don't know who it was, who donated 80,000 shekels.
Wow.
So I guess it really moved him. So he looked for what 80,000 could be significant of, and they came up with that. So in a certain sense, that whole Farbrengen was around the point that this one, and it was it went back and forth, because at first she said, I'll give you 80,000, and she says it's a bank transfer, and they checked, and they said a bank transfer will anyway take 24 hours, and she said, but what happens if you don't make it to the 5 million? I want to give more. So she thought some more, and she said 130,000.
Wow.
So she went back and forth with the Rav. The Rav said, no. The way we say it is, Baruch Hashem Yom Yom. You bless Hashem every day. If we'll need more, you'll give the day after. Don't worry about it. But it really moved him. There was somebody who was so so intensely involved in making this work. So he talked about it. But the rest of the Farbrengen was a really a lesson in what we've been talking about so much, that when you have success, you don't, like what the Rebbe said, you're not content with it. So on the one hand, you can't ignore the fact that there was a success here. So what do? You say it's a stage in the middle of something more. So how did he describe it? He said, now we've been circumcised. Now we can actually go affect the world.
Wow.
So it's like you have to, on the one hand, celebrate the success, but you have to turn it into part of the process that is going on, and direct all the energy to what's going on next, what will happen next. So it was a live demonstration of everything that he's been talking about. Because the truth is, I've never seen him successful. This was the first time. This is the very first time that I've seen him successful in something that was worth even mentioning. I don't know. I imagine when he had children, but he never shared that with us. But here was something very public that everybody saw. And so there was a demonstration of, so what do you do with such an incredible success? How do you not churn it? How do you not let it bring you down? Because you'll celebrate the success and stop there. And that's what people do. So right away it was, Ken, that this is a very important stage as we go to do a lot more. And you can't. There's no period after this. It's just a semicolon, and then you've got the next stage after that. Okay. So that was closing up a few points. What we need to finish now, and I still haven't translated it, so I'm sorry. What I brought you is actually what I was hoping to get to. It's because it will be a little bit longer today, but. I want to finish the whole thing with that we started discussing last time, that in the future the passive confidence will overtake the active confidence, will become more important. So this was something that we did. It's at page 106 still.
106?
So this is the long note that we started 4 classes ago, I think, on Mesilat Yesharim, right? That the difference between Chizkiyahu and between King David is that King David is clean. He knows that he is purified from all unconscious evil, not just the conscious things that he knows about, but even those sins that a person, as it says, dash ba'kevav, that a person steps on with his heel, he doesn't even notice it. And really, the dash ba'kevav is like to say in the subconscious, because there's no feeling in the heel. The person doesn't have feeling there. So it's those things that I don't feel that I suffer from. So because David was so clean, even of that, and we said that was even the residue left over from thinking to do something wrong but not even doing it, that even that he did tshuva on, even that he cleansed himself out. So therefore he had perfect active confidence to go and pursue his enemies. And we said that it's even his confidence, his self-confidence in going to pursue his enemies and saying to Hashem, like, don't step in, don't let me do it all by myself, was a process of further purification, to see that there was nothing that would hold him back, and to see that he had really done tshuva, that there was no feeling that somehow my sins, my hidden sins even, would cause me to fail here. So that's what we talked about. We talked about the kidneys purifying and so on. And last time, and then we said that as the first temple period waned down, there was less and less active confidence, and everything became more and more passive, until Chizkiyahu was the last generation who has no active confidence left at all. He only has passive confidence, and after that the temple's already destroyed. Because the temple and Yerushalayim in general represent active confidence. So then we said that as you come back to Eretz Yisrael, there's a movement from being passive, like we were in the state of exile, to becoming more and more active, to realizing that we now have been given back the responsibility to take care of ourselves. And that's the big shift that has been occurring in the past 100 years, you could say. That we see more and more that Hashem is pushing us to take responsibility. And taking responsibility means moving from passive confidence to active confidence. It's now up to us. However, we said that which one is better, passive confidence or active confidence? So we said passive confidence is in a sense much better, because then you rely on God. So you feel God all the time. But when you're with active confidence, so it doesn't feel that way. So now we need to understand this, that in the end, movement from passive to active is what we call the awakening of the feminine, because the passive is the feminine and the active is the masculine. And it's not just a movement here. We're not shifting from one gear to the other, but rather we're taking the passive confidence and putting it into the vessel of the active confidence. It's joining the 2 feet together, or joining Hod and Netzach together. It's not just we're shifting now from Hod to Netzach. Okay? When the temple was destroyed, there was a movement. It was like the right-hand side was deteriorating until it ended up in the left. It fell down into the left. But the movement from left to right is one of inclusion, meaning that the left becomes included in the right. Interestingly enough, when it's fully included, so then the right is called the end of the right. It's not called the end of the left. It's called the end of the right. Ketza Yamin. The end of days in Hebrew is not written the end of days. It's written the end of the right. Okay.
What
Usually when you say days, you say Yamim. Yud Mem, Yud Mem. But at the end of Daniel, when he describes the Tchias HaMesim, the resurrection of the dead, so he describes that time as the end, not of days, but of Yamin, of the right. It almost sounds the same, but at the end there's a nun instead of a mem.
Does this have any implication
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the
same.
right government
Oh,
going to the end of the right?
But why is the left being included in the right, the end of the right? It seems more to the end of
Right.
the left.
So that's what we'll explain now.
Right, that's.
And we'll see this a lot more in chapter 8 when we come to conscious determination again. So in conscious determination, we'll say it now, but we'll study a lot more in chapter 8. Normally, how would the left be included in the right? You would think that if the left is included in the right, how could you include passive into active? What would that look like?
It's
Restraint.
like self-assertion and self-surrender at the same time.
So how can you do both at the same time? So she said something very interesting.
You're
It's
putting a
like
limit.
restraint. It's like the end of the right says that the right doesn't go all the way down. Like usually the right side is very long and the left side is short. So what's one way of saying that? Because when you say passive and you connect it with shortness, what would you say? That to be passive is like to say, I don't have it within my power to reach that far. I can only go so far. That's why I'm passive. Because Hashem, you have to complete it. And as I become shorter and shorter, my left side becomes shorter, so then my feeling is, my reach is even less, and you, Hashem, have to complete the rest. You have to take the carry me the distance. The right side is completely the opposite. It says I can reach as far out as I want. So to limit the right side is like to say that the left has affected the right in such a way that not everything in the right side has to actually act. But you'll understand in a second what the idea here is. But it's like saying that I've done everything that I need to do, and the rest just happens by itself.
But yeah.
So that's an interesting example of the right extending even further somehow. Okay? That somehow she can reach even that is like a very beautiful example of what Moshe Rabbeinu is. And Moshe Rabbeinu is Netzach.
Yes.
So he's like the right extending. So anybody who comes in contact with him suddenly gets this ability to extend much further than before. Really, what that means is the Moshe Rabbeinu, he's Dat, he's conscious, he's the sphere of Dat, and what Dat does is it extends your abilities. Everything that you become conscious of, you gain in it. And so let's say, it says about Moshe Rabbeinu in the Talmud that he was 10 cubits high. They say it is something that seems to be derogatory. Why? Because if you're 10 cubits high, so you look like a Martian, or I don't know, like something really weird. Just imagine somebody who's is 3 meters high, but who said that you're as wide, that you're proportional? Maybe you're not. You just look like a long stick, and you have funny little hands and funny little feet, and you're out of proportion completely. So at the beginning, the Gemara says, well, if it was that high, he must have been a Baal Mum. He must be like an invalid in some way, because you can't be that tall, and all the proportions are off. So it says no. He's 10 cubits relative to his cubit. Meaning, what does he have? He has, all his proportions are right, but he's just 3 times the size of a regular person. A regular person is 3 cubits high. That's usually the explanation. That our height, check this, that our height is 3 times from here to here.
That's not very
It's
high.
very surprising,
It's not
right?
much.
It doesn't look like that would
No.
work. But check this. This is about 60 centimeters.
All the way to the fingertips.
Okay, all the way to the fingertips. So from here, it's like that the foot is exactly right. That you can measure a person's foot from here to here. But the entire height of the person is just 3 of these. So if this is 60 centimeters, it makes sense. 60 times 3 is 1.80 m. That's about the regular height of the person. So that makes sense. But it's very surprising at first when you look at it. Yeah, it wouldn't seem that will work. Why is it that way? That's how the Gemara describes it. So in Kabbalah, what it means is that every partzuf, every full stature, how do you say partzuf in Hebrew? Partzuf is not a Hebrew word. It's not a Hebrew word. It's from Greek. It means, we've talked about this, it means persona. So that's why it's related to face, because people say that the persona is like the face mostly. But really, from the Gemara,
The persona is like to sound through something.
right, because the original meaning of persona was the mask that they used to put on in Greek plays, in Greek drama. So they, right, so there was a how you sound, persona. So the interesting thing is that in Hebrew you would probably say koma, which means stature or height. So the height is really, our height is divided, it's 3 times this. It's 3 times something. So what would we say that is? That's Chabad, Chagat, Nehi. Those are the 3 parts of the Sfirot. Right? So it's 3 times as much as just one part. And the one part would be any 3 Sfirot that you take, the Chabad, Chagat, or Nehi. So that would be the full stature. Moshe Rabbeinu extending Miriam's, Batya's arm would be like giving her, because he gives her dat, and suddenly she's much taller, in the sense that if until now she was smaller, she only had chagat, let's say, or she maybe had ne'i, or anything like that, then she now extended further. She received mochin, she received mindfulness, so that she could grow. In general, it says, really the Gemara is not talking about how tall Moshe Rabbeinu is. The Gemara doesn't know. I don't think it was there to take a picture and to measure him. I don't think anybody measured him back then, and there was no need for it. But the Gemara is trying to get a point across. What's the point? The point is that Moshe Rabbeinu was taller in the sense of the spiritual height. He was more tall than all the other people in his generation, because the other people in his generation, the Zohar describes them as in a state of ibul, in a state of pregnancy. Meaning there's like the fetus in the womb, it's curled up, and it's called 3 within 3. It's really 3 and 3 within 3. But it means that everything is curled up. All 3 parts are folded and covered by the bottom third. The bottom third covers the top 2/3. So really the person is not yet developed. He hasn't come out yet.
What about Adam Rishon?
He was full stature. He had all the stature. And then he lost it.
What's full, like Moshe, like 10?
3, 3, and 3. He had all of them.
He became shorter after the
Ken says that he lost a half of it. So what this half is, obviously, certainly the mochin he lost. And he lost some top third of or top half, that we call, is how it's called, of his emotions. That everything became revealed now. Everything was out in the open. That's what he felt, that he's naked. Mm-hmm. Everything can be seen. The top third of the emotions cover, or are able to cover at least some of the emotions, meaning not everything that I feel do I have to express. But once he lost that top half, they had no mind, no mindfulness, and no ability to cover up his emotions, so he became naked. He felt that he's naked. He felt that everything that he felt was immediately seen. What is it like? It's like a little child. It's like going back to becoming a child. And he has to rebuild himself. And to rebuild myself is to gain mindfulness again, until I can create new emotions that can cover themselves up, that don't have to be naked. That's all to understand all this. Why does this have to? So we said that when the left is included within the right, what it actually does is it shortens the right. So one way of saying it would be like restraint. Another way of saying it would be that I need to do less on my part, and even what I do on my part it looks like it's being done by, it's happening by itself. You see that I'm involved, but there's a feeling that this is happening by itself. It's not, it doesn't require effort. It's almost effortless. And so I'm acting in the world, I'm functioning without needing to carry things out fully in the way that we understand carrying things out fully.
Hashem and us.
So I'll give what's a big difference between that. The feeling today is that whatever we don't take care of won't happen.
Uh-huh.
Especially when it comes to the state of Israel. It's like the feeling that whatever, that I'm fully in control, so therefore whatever I don't take care of will never happen. The feeling when the left, that's passive, is included in the right, is that I set things in motion. I have to set them in motion, but they complete by themselves. That's Ketza Yamin. I don't need to fully extend my right in order to finish it, but rather I set it in motion. And that's a very big shift from the type of thinking that we have now. The type of thinking that we have now is that you have to carry it through and you have to break reality if you need to. The whole point in adding the left into the right, let's say it like this, that the right is masculine, so it wants to break reality. The left, being feminine, is more at peace with reality. Because the feminine is reality, so it's not going to break itself. So if you have a masculine outlook on life, so the only thing that you'll have is what you'll do. So if you need to, whatever needs to be done, you do it to get the result that you want. If you're feminine, it's like an understanding that you don't have to break reality in order to get what you want. You don't have to fight to get what you want. You don't have to leave carcasses on the side of your path in order to get what you want. That you need to set things in motion the right way. And that's what we call ishtadlut, but really it's saying that you will see it through, but it's not done by forcing reality. It's not done by breaking it, or the word that I use when we talk about conscious determination. You don't rape reality. You don't take away its free will. You don't break it. You have to be considerate of the fact that it might have its own inner processes that are being set in motion, and they'll work. Why? Because I trust that reality, passive confidence says that reality is good in its essence. It is good. Hashem is good. That's what we said. It's very it's somewhat similar to the emunah that we were talking about, that there's only goodness here. It's like chashov tov ve'yeh tov. How could it be that just by thinking I would attain a change in reality? So that's complete passive confidence. What is it when passive confidence is added to be the pnimius, to go into active confidence? It means that you do have to do something, but that something can be even symbolic sometimes. And then the feeling is it just goes off by itself. It continues. Hashem was doing this all the time. Even your action can even be interpreted as just some kind of passive action, because it's symbolic. So this is a very important principle to understand, how the Rebbe saw the redemption differently than people who are netzach. The Rebbe in this sense is very hod. All of Chabad is very hod.
Really?
It's very passive in that sense, but passive added into the netzach. And the most important Yom Yom that describes this is 24th and 25th of Kislev. We won't learn it now, but you can look at it.
All the effort that Chabad has had to go out into the world.
Right. But there's no effort to force reality to change.
Just be there.
To be there, to offer it. And as the Rebbe said, when you offer it properly, it will create the change that you want. But don't break people. Don't break reality. Don't fight reality. You stand very firm. I never give up. And even if you want to, like the guys in Sweden now, that they have to pay 60,000 euros because they educated
Oh
their
gosh,
kids.
oh my gosh, that would
So that's like not to give up. Set them. You don't say, oh, because of this, I guess this is a sign that we need to leave Sweden. No, it's not a sign for anything. It will change, but you can't, I mean, you don't have to say amen, but you can't give up either. You can't give up. You have to stand your ground. So, if it's come to that, we have to pay 60,000 euros. We'll pay 60,000 euros. But we're here. We're not going anywhere. You know the
because
story.
they were studying.
Because they did homeschooling for the kids.
Oh.
I mean, that was,
Okay.
you know, they took it out of context. It was, you know, wasn't
Yeah,
just
yeah.
because they were studying.
Every day there's a story like this somewhere in the world. It doesn't really matter. The point is that it's active, but without the fully outstretched right arm. Meaning it's not to punch reality in the face. But you set things in motion and you trust that there is an inherent goodness in reality that once it picks up on what you're doing it will catch on. It will change reality. It's what we call
Slow
today
dripping water.
what we call today critical mass. That there's certain things that you do, and at some point, they will completely alter reality. Whereas it's very interesting
Yeah,
that
it reminds me of like what David used to say about Mashiach. He said it's like every drop is like a test tube.
Mhm.
Drop. And all of a sudden, crystal,
yeah, I don't know.
right? Like that's what we call it Mashiach, but every drop
Yeah.
along the way,
Right.
it's like
That's a nice analogy of crystal.
So that's called Ketzah Yamin. That's Mashiach ben David, and that's the difference between Mashiach ben Yosef. Mashiach ben Yosef, the Mashiach son of Yosef, he's completely from 0 to 100. He has to fully develop. He has to go through all the stages. But David, his gift,
he has to fight.
he actually fights. Very interesting.
He fights and he dies.
He's Ken. That's why he stands the risk of dying, because he actually goes to war, and he actually does things. So the first example we have of this is in Egypt, that there was a contingency of Jews that went out with a false Messiah from the tribe of Ephraim.
They left.
They tried to leave, and they fought the Egyptians, and they lost, and they were all killed. And then came Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu is already the rectified Netzach in this sense. He's already the rectified active confidence. That he only begins the things, but Hashem finishes them. And he says, it'll be so, and boom, you get this plague, and then that one, and then and in the end, he only neteh et yadcha. It's only lift your, like, stretch your arm out.
So David.
But you don't have to
was
go
David
and.
passive?
So?
Why is David?
No, David wasn't. That's why David in the future will only be known as half a Caesar, it's called. In the future, David is called half a Caesar.
Why is he
Not the full Caesar, not the full king, just half a king, because he's only Netzach. He's only active confidence. He had no passive confidence in him.
So he has to be passive this time around.
So when he comes this time around, he's called Mashiach ben David. He's not David himself, but he's the descendant of David. So he's already learned the art of being passive. And it's included within his activity.
And what did you say about Mashiach ben Yosef, 1 to 100? What does that mean?
Zero to
He needs
zero.
to go the distance. He has to feel that he did he went through all the stages from being a child to being an adult. He has to feel. Whereas David look like a child. The real Mashiach can look like a child, and he still acts like an adult. It makes no difference to him how old he really is. He hasn't. His maturity is his ability to understand that I don't have to finish. I have to do everything in my power, and then it sets things in motion.
And that's the way we all need to be.
Okay, that's. I think that that really when you think about the two different outlooks that are predominant in today's Jewish world, they manage to go between these two pictures of reality. One says, whatever I don't do won't be. If I don't
Right.
take care of myself, nobody will.
No way that's like.
And therefore, the conclusion is, I have to do everything from A to Z. And therefore, what will the redemption be? My Z. Whatever I can do, the most that I can do, that's the redemption. And so what have you made the redemption into? Something that's man-made. And if it's man-made, it's very limited. Okay? Meaning, if I can't solve this problem, it's not part of the redemption. The other outlook is we don't have to do anything. Or do very little. Just be passive. Hashem will bring the Mashiach, whatever that is. It's all divinely made. There's no human action involved. But the truth is that it actually has to be the passive within the active, which says you have to act. All that you can do in your hands, you should do from A to Z. But know that there's a million letters after Z. There's so much more after Z that you can't reach. But when you do what you can, reality is turned on. And when it's turned on, that's like Hashem already doing it. That's already the hidden forces within reality taking over and using what you've started and taking it to a whole new level. That's why I use the example of critical mass. Because what happens in an atomic bomb is really you have something that's, inert. And you begin a process of fission, and when enough of these particles tear apart, suddenly the whole mass all at once tears apart, and then you get a bomb. Otherwise, then it's just a little bit of radiation. And that bomb, where did that come from? So what Einstein showed us is that there's so much energy concealed in reality. In matter, there's so much energy. And if you want to know how much energy, you take the amount of matter that you have and you multiply it by c squared. The speed of light squared is a huge number. Where's all that energy hiding? It's inside. Can I tap into it? Can I take, this piece of paper? There's a lot of mass here. Can I tap into that amount of energy? I can't. No matter what I do from A to Z, will not tap into everything that's in here. Unless I'm working with Hashem, as it were, here. And I'm saying, I do my part, you finish it. And that David didn't say. David said, stand aside entirely. I don't want you to finish it. That's why David is entirely active confidence.
Is it what they did with Jericho? With the trumpets and around the wall?
Ken, that was a good example. That all we did was circle it 7 times and blow trumpets.
With a certain note.
Ken. And Hashem says, once you, in a certain sense, this is, I think, why people are taken in by Harry Potter. You didn't think that was the next thing I would say, right?
Nope.
Because what it's bringing back after so much, call it active confidence in science and in the human mind, and it's bringing back a sense of wonder that you can do an incantation or something like that, and it has tremendous effect. Of course, I don't believe in incantations. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that you set up a system as well as you can. You build your family as well as you can. And you educate your children as well as you can. But in the end, it's a magic trick. The fact that they come out normal, or they come out okay, or things work out in the end, that's already the goodness inside reality revealing itself. And you have to trust, passive trust. You have to imagine this. And we'll learn more about it in chapter 8, that you have to have a vision of what this goodness is going to look like. You can't just leave it up for, whatever it comes out. You have to, again, this is like the magical part of it, that you have to have a picture of what you're trying to attain. If you don't have a picture of what you're trying to attain, you're just saying, okay, whatever it will be. That's not active confidence. That's not conscious determination. You have to determine where reality is going to go, but you don't have the power to bring it there. You only have the power to think where it's going. So in that sense, the Rebbe kept saying that I don't need the state of Israel to reach redemption. Because who said that this is what you need to do? So right now, he saw it all the time as like a defense.
Hmm?
You need to get together to defend yourselves because it's a tough neighborhood here. But it's not that this is what will lead. Again, if you think that this is what leads to redemption, so you've missed the point. Your redemption is just in the end the little that man can do. But there's no divine vision in it. And if you're missing the divine vision before you start doing, then as far out as you'll reach, even with your right hand, you'll never create wonders. You'll never create something special in reality.
So until the left and the right get their act together.
No, left and right here have nothing to do with it, because left and right here are not, they don't represent passive and active confidence in Hashem. They represent passivity and activity in reference to man. Neither of them takes their vision from Hashem.
Well, we hope somebody does.
We do.
Let's get into government.
So wait a minute, he's saying that what we do here in Eretz Yisrael is part of, it's not redemption, it's part, I don't
We
know.
are here, the very fact that
We're
are
here, okay, Jewish neshama is calling back, being called back here somehow through whatever journeys we've all gone through. So, what is Ruknik saying about the vision of goodness or redemption that on one hand we have to keep doing, on the other hand it's not in our hands.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I know a lot of people in Brooklyn who wouldn't come here because Mashiach hasn't come yet.
Right, so
So-
they're completely passive.
They're completely
The
passive.
fact that you can move to Eretz Yisrael now means that you have to move from passive to active, because Eretz Yisrael is active confidence. But if it was just active like David, so that's not redemption. That's only David. It's half a Caesar. To bring the full redemption, there has to be that the passive that I've learned while in exile becomes part of the active that I exercise now. So what does it mean? That there's always a limit to what I as a human can do, and almost like a magic, like waving my wand, I'm doing something symbolic, relatively speaking, to the final effect that I'll have. Meaning, I can't cause everything that's going to happen. I can only put things into motion. I can only bring reality to want to change. But I can't create the change itself. I don't change it itself. Simple. So what does it matter if I give tzedakah? Why would my giving tzedakah suddenly bring redemption? Doesn't make any sense. It's like a magic trick. But if I put some lizard this and some cat hairs this and then mix them up, poof, somebody's gonna want to marry me. What's the connection? There's no connection. It says the same thing. When you put tzedakah into a tzedakah box, you're doing what you can with your right hand. But you're setting reality into motion by doing that. And if the net effect of what putting that coin into the tzedakah box will do is much greater than the act of putting the coin in. It's as far as I can reach right now, but I'm always aware of the fact that as far as I can reach, the main thing is what comes after that.
Because of intention also.
That's why I have an intention. You follow? So the fact that we can come back to Eretz Yisrael is the sign from Hashem that now it's time to include the left and the right, to take the passive and include it within the active. But that's all it is. It doesn't say you have to create a democracy. Maybe you learn in Torah and you come to the conclusion democracy is what the Torah wants. Fine. Great, that's a divine vision. But if you just did it because you feel that this is all you can do, this is what needs to be done, and for instance, I will kill as many Jews as I need to get this to make this happen, which is exactly what happened. And anybody who stood in the face of this, they killed. They killed many Jews for it.
What are we talking
The
about?
people who set up the state.
Oh.
They killed many Jews on the way. And not just passively, actively. Not just killed them. There's many people. Why? Because they were some kind of impediment to this picture that they had. That this is what we need. Why? Because otherwise the nations of the world won't allow us to have a state here, because it has to be a democracy. And they keep doing the same thing today. That when you allow Jews to be killed because you're afraid of what your retaliation will cause, what are they afraid of? That we're not a democracy. And we only have a right to exist if we're a democracy. So that's, again, it's like thinking only with what you're capable of doing. And because there's only what you're capable of doing, it's only up to you. There's no Hashem. So there's no passivity, and there's no ability to understand. There's a limit to what I can do. And really what happens, I can only set things in motion.
It's kind of beautiful, isn't it? Like it's like rectified reality dependent on rectified self.
Yeah.
Like
It's the opposite of ego.
together. Yeah, like it
That's what we
happened
mean, that a
together.
person lives with the feeling of that I have a divine mission. But having a divine mission and having confidence that I can achieve it is different than just having self-confidence, in the sense that, and that's what we're learning here, that when the left is included in the right, so then you have this feeling that I do as much as I can, but the main course is after that. It comes afterwards. I cannot finish everything just with my own prowess. It's just not enough. Still, I can't sit still for a minute. I have to do everything that's in my power. But everything that's in my power is still just bringing it to the brink. And then how it works, how it turns out, that's not up to me already. And that's where the shortness of the right comes in. That's why it's called the shortness, the ketzayamim, the end of the right. Because if it was entirely right, just active confidence, if I only have right, it can easily become just pure arrogant self-confidence. Just a person is so self-confident, he's so full of himself that there's nothing he can't do.
Full blown.
Okay. So there has to be some tzimtzum in it, but the tzimtzum is not to say you can sit and by idly and watch things happen. No, you do as it looks exactly the same. It's like the guy who has self-confidence does everything he can, except this person says, whatever I didn't do will never happen. And the rectified person says, I did as much as I can,
Then it will happen.
and now the great thing that's coming afterwards is up to you, Hashem. Because I did everything that I could. I took it as far as I could. So in that sense, I'm not extending my right all the way. I'm like saying that at some level I'm restraining it. Not because I'm sitting idly by, but by saying that what I can do is not the full reach of reality. Reality can do much more than this. Reality can attain much more than this.
Reality is innately good.
Right, because it's innately good. It's greater than my good. And so, like the idea again of Einstein revealing that matter really has an infinite amount of energy inside. It's just how do you tap into that? So there's certain things you need to do, but once you've done them, reality takes over, as it were. So that's the feminine outlook, which is passive, and that's why it's called tachshav tov yeh tov. You think good, and it will be good. Of course, we want to not just think good; we want to think good and do something good. But the doing something good, and this we'll learn when we're in chapter 8, is actually that you don't need to do anything. There's no action that you need to do. Or put it this way, it doesn't matter which action you'll do. It just doesn't matter at all.
Do something.
You need to do something.
So don't say
Just do
that
something.
You don't need to do. You do need to do.
You need to do because it's a vessel for it. But it's not because the action itself is what's doing it. So what we'll see is that the eyes, which are the most passive part, that they're the most passive type of action that there is. We talked about this, that eyesight in the ancient world was active,
There goes the.
as opposed to our eyesight, which is passive. Right? Because by us, eyesight means that light is entering my eyes, and I'm seeing a picture of what there is. By them, it was that light came out of the eyes and illuminated reality. And by illuminated, they mean like illuminating, like in a drawing. Like that you picture reality in such a way, and it is that way.
Like Moshe when he looked at the land.
Right. That when you look at it, you change it. But obviously, everybody understands that eyesight is very, very hard to call it something that acts. Even if you
But
think.
it is, because it has to do with the brain, and how you perceive is what you perceive.
But that's you. But is it affecting reality? So it says, yes, that's exactly your contribution to reality. Is that when you choose to see it a certain way, that's what reality was waiting for. That's the key to changing reality.
That's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, whatever he looked at,
Okay.
it was burning.
Okay, but he did more than that.
No,
What- Ayin Tova is also,
Sun.
but more than that, there's Ayin Tova. He also did that at the beginning, and then they went back for another year, and then only his son did. But
The key to changing reality is what?
is your good perception on reality? Is that you look at reality wanting to bless it.
Good eye.
The good eye, Ayin Tova. Or it's called the Ayin of Yaakov, which is equal to Bracha Tov Chaim. That's the beginning of Parshat Re'eh. And it says, Re'eh Anochi noten leferecha et hachaim ve'et hatov, et hamavet ve'et hara, uvacharta b'chaim. So there's Chaim, Tov, Bracha is equal to Ein Yaakov, the eye of Jacob.
Oh yeah, Betach?
Betach. That's Betach. Betach Badad Ein Yaakov. That's Bracha Tov Chaim. Those are the three things that have to come out of the eye, meaning in the perception of reality, to see it blessed, to see it good, and to see it full of life. And when these three things come out of the eye, which is the most passive active thing I have, if I do it with my arm, it's already completely, there's a lot more activity there. So as we'll see in conscious determination, it never goes down to the arm really. It never has to go down to the actions.
What was the expression? Betach?
Betach. Bracha Tov Chaim.
Bracha Tov Chaim. These three words together equal Ein Yaakov, 100. I don't remember how it works. Anyway, that's what it's equal to. I wanted to say that something else. So that's the main thing that comes out of this. It doesn't mean that you don't act. You do act, but for the full passive confidence to be included in active confidence, all you need really is the eyes. You also act with your arm, and we'll see what you do with your hands. But it really ends with the eyes, because it's the least active thing you can do, which is to look at things with a good eye. So all this, Rabbi Shimon calls that with the secrets of the Torah, with this book, he says, with the Zohar, they will come out of exile with rachmim, with compassion, with mercy. So how does this work? So really, this is a beautiful way to see it. So if we're moving from Hod into Netzach, so there's a sun, a yellow sun above this whole landscape. The yellow sun is Tiferet. That's Rachamim. It means that when this works properly, the feeling is that everything is compassionate. It's like what shines up above you. It's very important to understand all these things, but it's like that when Yitzchak moves into Avram, or Avram moves into Yitzchak, what they have above them is Yaakov. But Yaakov himself, what he feels is that his source is the Keter. So this is the whole thing. But what does it mean? That when they were able, these two very, very different individuals, Avram and Yitzchak, to combine and create Yaakov, that became the sun over them, that became the Torah that came out of their combination. It's like saying that it just repeats in every generation in a different way. That if you can include them in the way that they were included, when did they include? with one another
And the Akedah.
in the Akedah. Right? When Avram took Isaac to sacrifice him, what?
He needed the
And he needed to use Gevurah, and Isaac had to use Chesed to love him and to accept one another. And so the sun that rose above them, really, Yaakov is here, but here, this is Moshe Rabbeinu. This is the dot that's Moshe Rabbeinu. He's the soul of Tiferet. So the sun that rose above them was the Torah. And that was the thing. So this was the revealed Torah. Here, says Rashbi, this is this is the concealed Torah. That when you're able to make this motion from here to here, from Hod into Netzach, to combine the passive into the active, then that's what the prophet describes it. It says, "Zarcha lechem yirei shmi shemesh tzedakah umarpeh bichnafeh." That it will, for all of you who fear my name, a sun that's full of healing will rise, and the healing is in its, it says, in kanafeh, in its wings. We'll see the wings later on. So we'll get to them. So what time is it?
Just gone 1:30.
Okay. Seder. So that's a little bit about this.